Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are on this fast forward planet, which is wrapped in so many layers of turbulent change. I've stopped listing them. And Sustain What is a project where I try to cut through the complexity a little bit and offer you paths with your input toward better outcomes for humanity. Weather and climate are a big focus, as anyone who knows me knows. I've been on that beat now since the mid 80s, and that's getting to be a long time. And I'm really pleased today to join the Capital Weather Gang, as they were known, now Capital Weather, an enterprise in connecting people with weather information in a timely way, so they can not just know what to put on when they go outside, but understand risks from things like tornadoes and even longer term climate change. And this initiative got started, over 20 years ago. Is that?
Yeah,
Yeah. And two of the founding forces are here. And I want them to introduce themselves. And then also they're joined by colleague Camden Walker, Dan Stillman, and Jason Samenow. So Jason, the big news is you were affiliated with the Washington Post for about 18 years,
yeah,
and now you're back to being an independent entity. So maybe we'll start there, just with a quick sense of why and how that has happened, and then we'll go back in time and then forward in time.
sure. So I can walk you through the history, and thanks for having all of us on. It's a pleasure. Of course, we've admired your work for a long time, dating back to your reporting days at the New York Times and the Environmental Beat. Anyways, just a little bit about our history. So I started my career at the EPA as a climate change science analyst, and that was back in 2000. And I was just out of graduate school, had a degree in atmospheric science, and had dual interests in both climate change science and weather forecasting. And so I got a job at EPA, but I decided, in around 2003 that I wanted to stay active in weather forecasting. So I had this idea to develop a website for DC weather, an interactive website. Blogs were the rage at the time. And so we thought blogs would be a great format for two-way communication between the information provider or the expert and the audience, and the blog commenting area, giving the audience the opportunity to ask questions and engage with us. And also it would help us out because our audience could provide storm reports and give ground truth from the field. So sort of a mutually beneficial model for communicating weather information. And so we launched in 2004 as a side hustle, capitalweather.com. And I think Camden was there at the very beginning. And Dan was also there shortly thereafter, like within a year of us launching this website. And it was, I think it was the first local professionally operated blog style website for weather at the time. And so we did that for 4 years independently. Didn't make much money off of it. It was more or less a labor of love, a side hustle. We had a few ads on there, and the site paid for itself, but we it was like a little bit of beer money on the side. So we started to get some press attention. Washingtonian Magazine, the Post started to notice what we were doing. The Post did a feature on us. I think it was in 2004 or 2005, somewhere around then, after there was a big hurricane season, and we were blogging about hurricanes. And then in 2007, the Post approached us about becoming their local weather reporting team. And we were eager for more exposure. And so we jumped at the opportunity. And so we had a contract deal with the Post from 2008 to 2010. And at that time, I was still working for the EPA. So it was a night and weekends type.
I didn't realize that. That's interesting.
Yeah. So I was contracted to the Post at the same time I was at the EPA working on the endangerment finding for greenhouse gases. So that was a really busy time for me professionally, because the work at EPA was really demanding and high profile, and then we were working with the Post on this venture. And then in 2010 We had the snowiest winter on record in DC. We had the Snowmageddon storm and several other big
Right.
snowstorms that winter. That really kind of put us on the map. We had huge traffic surges, and our brand kind of blew up. And the Post decided, so, and our contract happened to be ending right after that winter. So the Post decided that, and I told them like that it wasn't sustainable for me to do both the EPA job and the Post job. And so they offered me a full-time position in the newsroom. So I joined the Post full-time in 2010. Dan and they provided freelance money and contract money. So folks like Dan and Camden could continue to support our operations. And so I had 16 years, 14 years as a full-time employee at the Post. And then I went back to contract in 2024. So that's kind of the history. And then, which kind of brings us up to today and sort of this new effort to, build an independent DC weather media company, which is our next big thing.
So I'd like to go down the chain here and hear from Dan on your what brought you into this mix. Did you have a government job at some point?
I did not. I've been in the nonprofit and private sector of the weather enterprise throughout my career, as far as my quote day jobs have been concerned. And Jason, so my background is meteorology, but also communications and journalism. And so back when Jason had started this blog, I was at the time periodically writing weather stories for the Kids Post, the kids section of the Washington Post.
Huh.
And I believe that's how Jason noticed me. He saw my byline and he reached out, and we sort of discovered, both of us were local here in the DC area. Both of us graduated high school and got master's degrees in the same year, not at the same school. Mm-hmm. And both of us with this, deep interest in weather, but also in communicating the forecast and engaging the audience. And so it didn't take much for him to convince me to come on board and help out. And so that's how I got involved. Pretty close. I think it was 2004 was probably the first time I posted on the blog, and have been, supporting ever since.
Yeah, I didn't know about the kids stuff. That's really interesting.
Yeah. It was a good way. I don't know that the kids section still exists, to be honest, but it was a good way to, because really when you're trying to communicate complex topics, to be forced to write that in sort of kid talk is a good way to communicate that to anyone, even adults.
Yeah. And Camden, your journey.
My journey is Jason finding me at some point in 2004, I think. Then he's like Wahoo Wah, loves UVA even more than me, and so I think being in that network helps. I swear he did like some sort of alumni search. And then we had a great chat over a beer at a place that no longer exists across from the EPA, and we were just on the same page almost right away about emerging technology, about how to cover weather, how we wanted to communicate it. And by the time Katrina was coming, I was on board and, kind of horrified and wanting to help with the Katrina communication. But that was the very beginning, and it's continued ever since. I love how we're evolving.
Yeah, it sounds like some of the big growth spurts came when there were big weather events. So
yes.
that we should talk a little bit about social media, because that's certainly a huge part of your connectivity to people who need the information. You were talking about a period just before Twitter, which came around in like 2007-ish, and Facebook, etc. I think it's pretty safe to say you were pioneering. I'm not sure if you were the first to be really out there doing the social media component for weather awareness, but maybe we could talk about that a little bit. How did that integration go forward? And Jason, maybe you first.
Yeah, sure. So I think we established our Twitter account in 2009. So it's hard to believe it's been 17 years on that platform, and we set up our Facebook page around the same time. And yeah, like when somebody introduced me to Twitter for the first time, I didn't even really know what it was and whether it would have value as a weather communications tool. But, we started to experiment with it, and we found it was actually really effective as a weather comms tool, just because, sort of the short fuse, bite-sized nuggets of information that you can provide in real time when an event is evolving is really powerful, because weather is almost like a play-by-play. It's like, a sports game, like the fourth quarter of a sports game, and you want to sort of walk people through it. And so Twitter is just great for things happening in real time and being able to provide that short commentary, analysis, share images, and then again, get that feedback from your audience with the storm photos from the reports from the field. And that can sort of, as I mentioned before, provide ground truth. If you're predicting X, Y, and Z, and someone says, "Oh, I've got hail at my house in Leesburg," that's helpful for people downwind to know when the storm moves east that they could be facing those hazards as well. So yeah, when weather is breaking, and we saw it during Sandy in 2012, when I think weather Twitter really blew up. That was sort of one of the big moments in weather Twitter history, was when Sandy hit, because a lot of influential meteorologists in the space were on the platform by then and providing, I think, critical information on that hazard in ways that people really found useful, and people who might otherwise have been cut off or not been able to get access to some of the things that were evolving as it was happening.
Right. That bi-directional part of it that you were describing,
yeah,
has become so important. Obviously, when I was doing .earth at the Times, my blog starting in 2007, I really transitioned from this idea of news being a unidirectional process, me going out and reporting, asking experts questions, and then delivering my synthesis to the public. And the conversations with readers and getting the experts and the readers sort of in the room together really was a transformational thing for me, especially on complex questions like climate change, climate risk. It led me to whole new ways of thinking. I want to sort of do a sidestep here a little bit to a conversation I had with Jim Moffat, who was an early Twitter engineer. He was one of the Twitter people who connected the API, made the API available. This is pre-Musk, for the data from Twitter to be used in tracking things like flash flooding. Mm-hmm. I did a conversation with him and with a young woman in Indonesia where they have an active mapping project for flash flooding in Jakarta that involves information, like you were saying, when a reader posts a picture, that's information. And they were, let me see if this, hopefully the audio will work for you. Just want to get your reaction, and then we'll get back into the chronology.
I think our attention is continuously being diverted away from, the places we actually live. And we need to find ways to redirect that attention towards how do we learn to read signals that are all around us, exactly like the image you shared earlier.
That sounds so true. So basically, their system, it's got a name. God, it's in here somewhere. They are using it as a way to do granular mapping around Jakarta, which is this gigantic, sprawling city that's deeply flood prone. And the information they get coming in from the audience is part of the mapping that helps to protect people. So maybe you could talk a little bit more about how that related to Capital Weather's evolution, and maybe down the chain here too. Dan?
Yeah, I can chime in on that one. So the social media has been so integral to our growth because of that two-way conversation and the sharing of photos and videos, from the audience on social media. And it's not just, I don't want to totally divert from the social media thread, but so social media is a little bit of a double edge, because it's this great way to sort of communicate back and forth. And then also, how do you balance that with wanting to bring people onto your platforms, and communicate there as well. And that's just a little bit of a segue to it's not just the social media that has been so integral, and it has, but even the comment sections on our own platforms, on our own content, has been that same dynamic with that two-way conversation, and people sharing with each other. And one of the things that Jason always brings up, and Jason has been sort of this guiding force on, the importance of that two-way communication and engagement. But that was one of, if not the top reason, one of the top reasons the Washington Post noticed and really reached out to us about that original partnership, is because they saw that engagement in our comments sections on our blog. And it was a kind of sort of loyal, enthusiastic, and not confrontational, because a lot of comment sections were already starting to become confrontational at that time, but not ours. It was a very diplomatic conversation, respectful, and they saw that and really thought, that's the kind of engagement we want to see more of on the Washington Post platform. And so that was a big driver of that initial outreach from the Post.
That's so interesting. Camden, did you have a social media or connectivity moment?
I am confident, but still a little uncertain about what the next step is in the evolution.
It sounds like a weather forecast.
Yeah, it's part of our DNA. That's what's interesting, is we came up with the forecast confidence expression for our users. I'm confident no matter what tools in the future evolve and come along, we'll continue to be audience focused, continue to engage with them. But this new creator journalism business model is definitely two-way. And so far, our audience seems very happy, and we're giving them new tools, and I think they feel very empowered and very connected to us.
And let's talk about some of the stuff you've done that's different than just weather forecasting. And you have a section on climate, and you have a lab that are part of the I don't know if those existed pre-launch or those new enterprises.
Yeah, those are all new.
Talk about them a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So what we've decided we want to do with this new site is give our audience more tools to be able to explore weather information themselves. And we have sort of three parts to that. We have sort of the weather now, which is sort of a lens into real-time weather information, including current conditions, pollen levels, air quality levels, UV index, webcams, and temperature maps, precipitation maps, and so people can sort of get a sense of exactly what's happening at their location at a given time. And so that's one piece. And then we have the forecast lab, which allows our audience to sort of basically be their own forecaster, because we provide a whole bunch of maps and tools so that they can see, for example, a simulated radar with respect to what might be coming this afternoon with thunderstorms. Or if you scroll down, we have outdoor planning tools. We have which tells you if it's going to be hot or if it's going to be a nice day, and charts and maps. So people can basically scan this page, and they can read our forecast, but then this can help reinforce our own forecast messages and let them see the data for themselves. If you scroll down a little bit more, you can see we have a whole high and low temperature forecast section, and then we've got precipitation analytics and so forth. And then finally, the climate room is basically a portal to climate data, so people can understand what's happened and on any date, including today's date and then past dates. So they can get a handle on whether this month, this day, this year, how it compares to normal. For precipitation, we're in a drought right now. So if you scroll down on the page, you'll see there are charts which show our rainfall deficits and how this year compares to the past. You just scroll down a little bit more. There's the rainfall. You can see that we're well below the dotted diagonal line, which shows that growing precipitation deficit. So we've got all sorts of tools, and they're interactive, and you can get data for any year in any of the three major airports in the area. So so we're just trying to give our readers more tools, and so that they can be informed weather consumers. And we fold some of this information into our own coverage as well. Dan, Camden, do you guys have anything to add to that?
No, not on my end. We've done our colleague Ian Livingston, done a ton of work to pull these 3 particular pages together.
Yeah.
And so, we've gotten great feedback thus far from our audience on having these tools. And there's a segment of the audience that really kind of eats the stuff up, right? They want all the goodies. They want all the, there's certainly some people who just want the forecast and they're out, and, they got 30 seconds and we give that to them for sure. Right. But then you have others that really want to dig in and dive deeper, and we want to make sure that we're covering our bases, for all of those audiences.
So, and the amount of information you have available must be explosively expanding. There's so much work with AI in terms of expanding the possibilities with the climate models and weather forecasts. I just got I got to show you my inbox from NCAR, which still exists for the moment. They have here hyper local weather forecasts wind forecasts are on the horizon. How do you keep track of the new possibilities?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big challenge. There's so much data and so much information out there. And, obviously we're on these distribution lists and we try to keep our hands on the pulse of the research. But the possibilities are indeed endless. And, we're, Ian's kind of our main tool developer, and he's done incredible work so far. But we all have a lot of different ideas about what we can do. And AI just really opens the door to do so much. Because you can code and you can produce tools and visualization so much faster now than you could just a few years ago. And so, we're going to one of the fun things about what we're building is that we're going to continue to iterate and add features over time. And we really want to hear from our community about what they want and what they like and what they find effective. And we also want to work on the art of making sure we're presenting information effectively so it's easy to understand and the user interface is intuitive and all that good stuff. So, but it's exciting.
Have you do you interact much as consultants in a way with other regions? I would assume there's obviously, when I here in Maine, I use weather, Wonderground and other things, but there are also lots of regional local forecasters who we rely on in Maine for our fast changing conditions. How much of the model that you guys created have people asked you about, in other parts of the country, or is there a way to expand beyond the Mid-Atlantic DC area? I don't know if that's
Dan, you want to take that one?
I can start. I think you'll have something to add, but I mean, we've gotten that question through the years, especially when people, DC is such a transient place, right? People are in and then they move out. And so people who lived here and gotten used to having us around, they go somewhere else and we hear from them, can you guys come here, please? Or, would love to have you guys in this city. And so it's something that we have thought about and talked about for a long time. How can you sort of bring this model to other metropolitan areas? And I think it's something, that we'll probably look at. Our goal has always been, we want to get this right in the DC area first. Yeah. And we don't think we had gotten there. I think now we think we're closer, especially with what we've launched now and the tools behind it, which are sort of modular and potentially reasonable to sort of extrapolate and expand to, another region somewhat easily. The big challenge is the talent, the forecasters, right? We're not going to go in and start forecasting, for another metropolitan area. So you got to combine the tools and the technology with the talent, but it's much more of a realistic expectation now to see how this could expand to other metropolitan areas.
And I would just add that there are a lot of creator meteorologists in different markets across the country who are starting their own thing. I think what's happening in the industry with TV being disrupted, there are broadcast meteorologists who are going out on their own because they see an opportunity. TV station audiences are shrinking, and they start their own thing and try to bring their audience with them. So we're seeing more and more creators, entrepreneurs building their own weather companies throughout the country. And so there may be opportunities for us to work with others along those lines. And, the American Meteorological Society, they've developed a whole certified digital meteorology certification program now so that digital meteorologists who aren't on TV but who are mostly on the internet have a way of getting accredited and signaling to their audience that they're trusted sources and they know their stuff.
That's actually really interesting. It's good to know. Yeah, we have.
There you go. Yeah, there's a CDM. Yep.
Yeah, we have a few like that here in Maine too, but it always comes down to developing a trusted relationship with your audience, whether it's on Facebook or wherever. And I guess you've already done that pretty much. How big has your audience been? When you had those pulses, when you have bad storm?
Oh gosh, easily we've had, during big snowstorms, we get into the 7-figure page views in a single day sometimes. So so we can see tremendous traffic surges, and that's when we gain our audiences. When we have the big events, and the challenge is always to hold on to as many of those folks as you can and try to make our site a daily habit for them. Right. So we're excited about the new business model because it's, we're signing people up, using email, and we send them a forecast each morning in their inbox. And so hopefully they're waking up to our forecast each day and creating that daily habit. And then, of course, we're trying to also sprinkle in as much interesting and entertaining content throughout the day to bring them to our website and to our app. So they're, it's not just a hit and run, so to speak.
I didn't ask you, is anything about the end of the relationship with the Washington Post related to all the big changes at the Washington Post? Why did that get cut? Why was that?
Sure. So, I think we've been talking about doing this for more than a year. So the layoffs and all of that, which were, of course, unfortunate, that didn't really play into our decision. I think, we've had bigger ambitions to become an independent company and, more than just a column, but that's part of a news organization, but, a multifaceted business, which,
sure.
So that was really our objective. And, we, really appreciate the experience we've had with the Post. They're really supportive over the years. And that's where we kind of build our audience and have had, great, worked with great people there, and we're pulling for them to be successful.
Well, I have one more question, and I know you guys are busy because this is your launch week. This relates a little bit to your experience at EPA and just the fact that the data you rely on mostly comes from the government. There is this thing called the National Weather Service.
Yeah.
And there, as we were saying, there's NCAR, there's all those balloons, there's all the data that gets fed into the computers. And how concerned are you about some of the issues that have emerged related to keeping those fundamental capacities going?
Yeah, Dan, why don't you take this one so I don't monopolize the conversation, and then and Camden, and then I can sort of add an additional thought as needed.
I'll start, and I get asked this question a lot by friends, by professional contacts, like, how have the cuts affected you, right? The cuts to NOAA, that has it affected weather forecasting? I would say, I think it's questionable if it's had a direct impact on, say, model accuracy yet. You've had with the weather balloon cutbacks, there's some evidence there. I don't know that that's been fully analyzed as to, if it's had a direct, negative impact on a specific forecast. But I think the more important thing is eventually it will make a difference. Eventually, if you keep cutting or you neglect with any system, right? The weather enterprise is this vast and complex system of observations and models and computers and dissemination infrastructure to get the warnings out, and coordination and communication. And if you neglect the system, eventually something will break. and who knows sort of what the dominoes are from that. And so I think if you're going to not just improve, forecasts, but even maintain sort of the level of accuracy and lead time that we see today, then you can't neglect it. You've got to keep investing in it, and eventually, some of these cuts are going to have a negative impact that people will feel with the forecast they're receiving.
Yeah, and Camden, any thoughts on this too?
So I am concerned, and I'm watching what's being flagged by our colleague Matthew Cappucci about a huge gap in Western balloon launches recently. I would love to see this analyzed, as Dan was saying, because I think there is maybe some emerging correlation, but I can't with any confidence say there's causation. And some of the weird, what I'm empirically observing as strange loss of skills sometimes, and it's not consistent. And I don't think things are quite as predictable as they were before. I think satellites and some indirect measurements got kind of screwed with in the last couple of years. And I don't have confidence those are hooked back into the modeling systems properly. But our team talks about it. I mean, you should be definitely aware that we talk about it in the background. We don't have the answers, but it's on our radar for sure.
Yeah, Matt's been on the show, as has Ian before too. So it's good to hear they're still part of the mix.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, they're all part of our team. And I mean, I would just add that, the Weather Service is hiring up again after the DOGE cuts. And,
right.
They've I think they're in the midst of a big hiring spree. That said, what you can't underestimate is the loss of institutional experience when you have all these veteran folks who have left. And, so much of forecasting is about experience and, understanding an area and its intricacies. And so, the loss of veteran meteorologists does have an impact, even if you replace them with, very young and talented people. And I think the future of the Weather Service is, obviously really promising because the new generation of meteorologists is getting trained on the latest and greatest tools and information. And I think AI is going to make a big difference there as well. So I think the future is bright, but in the meantime, there are going to be some setbacks just because of the loss of experience.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you have the experience you have, and there was a point when you were young innovators, and now you're, middle-aged innovators.
That's right. Yeah,
keeping
time
that
flies for sure.
Keeping that flow of the next generation going is really important too, and I'm glad you are doing what you're doing. Hold on one second. Just want to close out with one more thing here.
I like that theme, though. We've reinvigorated ourselves to be entrepreneurs again and get into that young frame of mind.
Yeah, that's true. No, I feel that way. I try not to. What's that that country song? Don't let the old man in. I think we're all in that mode. Well, it's been great to catch up with you all. Jason, particularly, we go way back to when you were at EPA, I think.
That's right. Yes, indeed.
And it's just good to have the model that you guys are demonstrating. This show goes, anywhere. So hopefully people can understand these issues are not just opportunities are not just related to the DC area. The model you've built is something to think about wherever you live and wherever you worry about weather. And thanks for being on Sustain What today, and good luck going forward as you build your company.
Thank you so much. Really
Thanks.
appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Right. And we'll call that a day. And onward, those who are watching now, you can share the link you've just been watching on. It gets archived right away. And this is Andy Revkin in Downeast, Maine. As we have very unusually, we've had weird weather this spring, but that's why you guys are around, and people like you everywhere, is to keep track of all that weirdness. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Hold on one second.